The early morning sun cast long, ruler-straight shadows across the manicured lawns of Willow Creek Estates. A community so meticulously planned, it felt less like a neighborhood and more like an architectural diorama. Every blade of grass in every yard seemed to stand at precisely the same height. Every mailbox was the identical shade of forest green, and every house was painted from a palette of 3 board-approved shades of beige. It was into this bastion of tranquil conformity that Marcus Thorne had moved, seeking a quiet harbor after a lifetime of navigating corporate storms. He was on his knees in the soft earth of his side yard, a space he had already begun to transform. The scent of freshly turned soil mingled with the delicate perfume of the heirloom rose bushes he was planting, their roots a legacy from his grandfather's garden. His wife, Amelia, was watching from the kitchen window, a soft smile on her face. Her long illness had made a sanctuary like this not a luxury, but a necessity. The garden was for her. This peace was for her. The illusion of that peace shattered with the crisp, authoritative click of expensive shoes on the sidewalk behind him. This is a flagrant violation of Covenant, Reactor 8.4.2. These will be removed by Friday. Mr. Thorne, voluntarily or otherwise. Marcus looked up slowly, shielding his eyes from the sun. Before him stood a woman who seemed to have been sculpted from the very essence of Willow Creek's rigid order. Eleanor Vance, president of the Homeowners Association Board of Directors, was a formidable figure in a tailored linen suit, her silver hair styled into a helmet of unflappable perfection. Beside her, a man in a polo shirt bearing the logo of Vance Landscaping shifted his weight uncomfortably, avoiding eye contact. Eleanor pointed a perfectly manicured finger at the small, decorative retaining wall he had just finished installing and the vibrant pink roses that now bloomed alongside it. That wall. Those bushes, they are an unapproved modification within a designated common area view corridor. Her voice was not loud, but it carried the chilling resonance of absolute authority, intended for the audience of neighbors now peering from behind their pristine curtains. It was a public challenge, a clear marking of territory. Marcus rose to his feet, wiping the soil from his hands onto his jeans. He was a tall man, with a quiet composure forged in countless boardrooms where fortunes were won and lost on the turn of a phrase. He had been a crisis manager, a man paid to find the single, exploitable flaw in an opponent's seemingly impenetrable armor. He met Eleanor's gaze, not with defiance, but with calm, respectful inquiry. "I believe you're mistaken about the property line, Mrs. Vance," he said, his voice even and low. "This 6-foot strip is part of my lot according to the survey I received at closing." He paused, letting the statement settle in the quiet air. "Could you please show me the official plat map you're referencing that designates this as a common area?" Eleanor's smile, a thin, bloodless line, did not waver, but a subtle tightening around her eyes betrayed her irritation. The public challenge had been met not with submission, but with a request for evidence. It was not the reaction she was accustomed to. I took the notice and scanned it. The language was vague, referencing uninhibited access to designated common area corridors. I looked from the paper to the gate, then back to her. Without another word, she turned and strode away, her landscaper trailing in her wake like a silent acolyte. Marcus watched her go, a familiar feeling settling in his chest. It was the same cold, quiet thrill he used to feel just before dismantling a hostile takeover bid. The battle for his small patch of peace had just begun, and it would be fought not with shovels and soil, but with documents, procedure, and the slow, grinding machinery of rules she had so confidently weaponized. He glanced back at the kitchen window. Amelia was no longer there. The smile was gone. He looked down at the vibrant rose bushes, their delicate petals a splash of defiant life against the beige conformity of Willow Creek. He would not let her take this from them. The next 2 days passed in an unsettling quiet. Neighbors who had previously offered friendly waves now averted their gazes, their smiles replaced with tight, anxious lines. A covenants compliance officer, a retired man with a clipboard and an air of profound reluctance, drove by Marcus's house 3 times, slowing to take pictures of the offending roses. The social pressure was a finely tuned instrument in Willow Creek, and Eleanor Vance was its maestro. On the 3rd day, the official declaration of war arrived. It was not, as Marcus had expected, a polite courtesy notice requesting he address the issue. It was a thick, cream-colored envelope bearing the letterhead of Prestige Property Management, the firm that served as the HOA's administrative arm. The letter was cold, formal, and procedurally incorrect. It was titled, "Final Notice of Violation and Demand for Immediate Compliance." The document cited for 8.4.2 of the CCNR's Maintenance of View Corridors, and stated that an unapproved retaining wall and landscaping had been installed on common area property. It bypassed the standard 30-day cure period and levied an immediate fine of $500, due within 10 business days. It further informed him that his failure to remove the installation and pay the fine would result in the matter being brought before the Board of Directors for a formal hearing. A date was already set, 2 weeks from Friday, in the community clubhouse. The final paragraph contained the requisite, chilling threat. Failure to resolve this matter will result in all remedies available to the association, including, but not limited to, the placement of a lien on your property. Marcus read the letter twice, his crisis manager's mind instantly dissecting its flaws. They had skipped the courtesy notice. They had skipped the formal violation notice with its legally mandated cure period. They had jumped straight to a final notice and a fine. A clear violation of their own bylaws and state statutes governing homeowners associations. This wasn't just an enforcement action. It was a targeted attack, designed to intimidate and overwhelm. Eleanor wasn't just enforcing a rule, she was breaking several to do so. This was her first mistake. He picked up the phone and dialed the number for Prestige Property Management. After navigating a labyrinthine automated menu, he was connected to a manager named Brenda. Her voice was a monotone of practiced indifference. "Yes, Mr. Thorne. I have your file," she said, the clacking of her keyboard echoing down the line. The violation was reported by the board president and documented by our compliance officer. The notice is valid. "I believe there's a procedural error," Marcus stated calmly. "According to the bylaws, I should have received a courtesy notice first, followed by a formal violation with a 30-day period to comply. This notice jumps straight to a fine." Brenda's sigh was a masterpiece of bureaucratic disdain. The board has the discretion to escalate violations deemed flagrant or those affecting common areas. President Vance determined this situation met that criteria. The fine stands. The hearing date is set. "Could you please provide me with a copy of the official HOA plat map that delineates the common area view corridor you're referencing?" Marcus asked, his tone unwavering. A pause. More clacking. "That is not a document we typically distribute to homeowners. The CCNRs are sufficient. Section 8.4.2. "But how can I comply if I can't verify the boundary you're claiming?" Marcus pressed. "My own property survey, which is a legally recorded document, clearly shows that land is part of my lot." "Mr. Thorne," Brenda said, her voice hardening, "are you refusing to comply with the violation notice?" "I am refusing to accept a fine based on a claim that appears to contradict official records and violates the association's own due process." He corrected her. "I'm happy to discuss this at the hearing." Please note for the record that I have requested the plat map and been denied. He ended the call, a grim sense of certainty settling over him. This was not about a 6-foot strip of land. It was about power. He was being made an example of. Later that afternoon, he saw his next-door neighbor, David Chen, a retired engineer in his late 60s, retrieving his mail. David was a kind man with a gentle demeanor who had lived in Willow Creek since it was first built. He had always been friendly, but since Eleanor's visit, he had kept his distance. Marcus decided to bridge the gap. "David," he called out, walking over to the property line, the real property line. David looked up, his expression guarded. "Marcus, everything all right?" "Just trying to understand the rules around here," Marcus said with a small, wry smile. He explained the situation and the letter he'd received. David's face fell. He glanced around nervously, as if Eleanor Vance might materialize from the perfectly pruned hedges. "Oh, Marcus, I was afraid of this." He lowered his voice. "Listen to me. Eleanor Vance doesn't lose. She's been running this board for 10 years. She treats the CC&Rs like her personal scripture, and she interprets them as she sees fit. People who cross her, they either move out or they fall in line." "But the process is wrong," Marcus insisted. "The claim itself seems factually incorrect." David shook his head, a look of weary resignation in his eyes. "It doesn't matter if it's wrong. It only matters that she says it's right. She has the board, the management company. She has the whole system on her side." He paused, looking at the roses. "She's particularly sensitive about the property lines on this side of the development. The developer made a lot of last-minute changes to the layout before the county approved the final plat. A few property lines are odd." It was a small comment, an offhand remark, but for Marcus, it was a flare of light in a dark room. Last-minute changes, final plat, odd property lines. Those were the breadcrumbs he needed. "Just be careful, Marcus," David advised, his voice a near whisper. "She will see this as a challenge to her authority, and she will use every tool the HOA gives her to crush it. For your wife's sake, maybe it's easier to just move the roses." Marcus thanked him for the warning, but as he walked back to his house, his resolve hardened. He had spent his career diffusing crises by finding the truth buried under layers of bluster and intimidation. He would not surrender his family's peace to a bully, no matter how powerful she seemed. The investigation had begun. The first step was to build a fortress of facts. Marcus spent the next 2 days compiling every piece of paper related to his property. He spread the closing documents across his dining room table, the deed, the title, insurance policy, and, most importantly, his property survey. The survey, stamped by a licensed state surveyor, was unequivocal. A clear black line demarcated his property, and the disputed 6-foot strip lay squarely within it. An iron pin, a physical marker, was still visible at the corner of his lot, exactly where the survey said it should be. This was his foundation. But Eleanor's power didn't derive from the facts on his survey. It came from the HOA's governing documents. He needed to master them. He downloaded the full covenants, conditions, and restrictions, CC&Rs, the bylaws, and the rules and regulations from the HOA's clunky community website. He read all 200 pages, highlighting every section pertaining to architectural modifications, common areas, and the enforcement process. As he suspected, the documents clearly outlined the multi-step violation procedure, courtesy notice, formal violation with a 30-day cure period, hearing, and then, only after a board vote, a fine. Eleanor and the management company had trampled their own rule book. He found Rate.4.2, the clause Eleanor had cited. It read, "No homeowner shall erect, place, or maintain any structure, planting, or other material on any area designated as a common area view corridor, as defined on the official plat map of the Willow Creek Estates subdivision, recorded with the county." The clause itself was real, but its power was entirely dependent on one thing: the official plat map. The very document Brenda at the management company had refused to provide. His next stop was the county recorder of deeds office, a sterile, quiet building downtown that smelled of aging paper and floor wax. He felt a familiar calm settle over him. This was his element, the hunt for the dispositive document, the single piece of paper that could end an argument. Behind a high counter sat a woman with sharp eyes and a cynical smile. Her nameplate reading Sarah. She looked up from her computer, her expression a well-practiced mask of boredom. "Can I help you?" "I'd like to see the recorded plat map for the Willow Creek Estates subdivision, filed around 12 years ago," Marcus said. Sarah typed for a moment. "Lot number." He gave her his address and parcel number. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. A few clicks later, a large, complex map filled her screen. "Here you go. The master plat for Phase 3. She turned the monitor toward him. Marcus scanned the intricate web of lines and numbers. He found his lot. The boundaries were exactly as his own survey had shown. He then searched the map's legend for any mention of a common area view corridor. He found several, marked with a distinct crosshatching. They were located on the other side of the community, along a stretch of property that bordered a small lake. There was no such designation anywhere near his lot. His heart beat a little faster. This was it. The core of Eleanor's claim was a fabrication. She wasn't just misinterpreting a rule. She was applying it to a place where it held no jurisdiction. "Could I get a certified copy of this, please?" he asked Sarah. "Sure thing," she said. Her interest now piqued. "Big dispute with the HOA." "You could say that," Marcus replied with a small smile. "Hate 'em," Sarah muttered, tapping at her keyboard to process the request. "Bullies with bylaws. They come in here all the time, trying to get me to interpret deeds and easements for them. I tell them I'm a clerk, not a judge." She paused, her eyes narrowing in thought. Willow Creek, that developer, Old Man Abernathy. He was a real character. Filed a dozen amendments and easements right before he sold off the last phase. Caused a lot of confusion. The word easement snagged Marcus's attention. Did he file any easements related to view corridors? Sarah's fingers danced across the keys again, her professional curiosity now fully engaged. She loved a good puzzle. Let's see. Easements. Abernathy Development. Ah, here's a weird one. Filed 2 days before the master plat was finalized. A scenic easement deed. Looks like it grants the association the right to maintain an unobstructed view over a portion of Lot 78. Marcus's blood ran cold. Lot 78. That's my property. Looks like it, Sarah said, pulling up the document. But hold on. She scrolled down, reading the dense legal text. This is a strange one. It's an easement on the rear 10 feet of your property, the part that backs up to the nature preserve. It just says, the HOA can prevent any structure over 6 feet tall from being built there. Nothing about the side yard, and nothing about landscaping. She looked up at him. What is your issue about? A 6-foot strip on my side yard, Marcus said. Sarah let out a low whistle. Then, she's blowing smoke. She's either conflating this rear easement with her view corridor rule, or she's making it up entirely. Either way, this document doesn't help her case. It actually hurts it by specifying a different location for view-related restrictions on your exact lot. He now had the official plat map disproving the existence of a common area on his side yard, and a specific easement deed that proved the developer and the HOA had already designated a completely different part of his property for view protection. He had her boxed in with facts. Before leaving, Marcus made one more request. "I'd also like to make a formal records request to the HOA for the unredacted board meeting minutes from the last 6 months." He knew, from his reading of the state statutes, that they were legally obligated to provide them, with redactions only allowed for specific, justifiable reasons like pending litigation or employee matters. He paid for his certified copies and thanked Sarah, who gave him a conspiratorial wink. "Good luck," she said. "Burn 'em to the ground." A week later, a thick envelope arrived from Prestige Property Management. It contained the meeting minutes. As he had anticipated, large sections were blacked out. One redaction, from a meeting 3 months ago, caught his eye. The visible text read, "Motion to approve contract for common area maintenance." The rest of the line, including the vendor name and the cost, was obscured by a thick black bar. The management company's cover letter cited vendor privacy and proprietary bid information as the reason for the redaction. It was too convenient. The redaction was a signpost pointing directly at something Eleanor wanted to hide. He now had the what a false claim, the where his property, and the how a broken process. All that was left was the why. The redacted minutes, he was certain, held the key. Armed with the certified plat map and the easement deed, Marcus drafted a polite, factual letter to the HOA Board of Directors and Prestige Property Management. He attached copies of the documents and respectfully requested that the violation be dismissed. He laid out his case with the precision of a legal brief. His property survey confirmed his ownership. The official plat map showed no common area or view corridor on his side yard, and the scenic easement on his lot pertained to a different area entirely. He sent the package via certified mail. Return receipt requested. For 3 days, there was silence. Then, the escalation came. It arrived not as a letter, but as a community-wide email from Eleanor Vance, sent from her official board president address. The subject line read, "A note on community standards and covenants." The email began with a saccharine ode to the shared aesthetic values that make Willow Creek such a desirable place to live. It spoke of the importance of respecting the rules that protect property values and ensure a harmonious living environment for everyone. Then, without naming Marcus directly, it pivoted. "It has come to the board's attention that a new resident has chosen to disregard these shared values by making unapproved alterations on a sensitive common area. Despite repeated, courteous requests from the association to comply with our governing documents, while the board always prefers friendly resolution, we have a fiduciary duty to uphold the covenants for the benefit of all 300 homeowners. We will not allow the selfish actions of one individual to undermine the visual integrity of our community. The matter will be resolved at the upcoming hearing, where we are confident the rules will be upheld." The email was a masterpiece of political maneuvering. It painted Marcus as a selfish, disruptive outsider and framed Eleanor as the noble defender of the community. It was a preemptive strike, designed to poison the jury pool of his neighbors before he ever had a chance to present his case. The effect was immediate. The few remaining friendly nods he received on his morning walks vanished completely. He saw neighbors whispering in driveways, their glances toward his house now laced with suspicion and disapproval. He was being socially isolated, branded as a troublemaker. Amelia felt it most acutely. "They look at me like we've done something wrong," she said, her voice small. "I thought we came here for peace." The pressure was immense, a psychological weight designed to make him surrender. It was then that he received an anonymous call from a blocked number. "Mr. Thorne." The voice was nervous, hushed. "My name is Arthur Chen. I'm the treasurer on the HOA board." It was David's son, a man Marcus had only seen at board meetings, always silent and overshadowed by Eleanor. "Mr. Chen," Marcus said carefully, "to what do I owe the pleasure?" "Listen, I can't talk for long," Arthur whispered. "I saw the evidence you sent. You're right. The plat map is clear. But it doesn't matter. Eleanor controls the board. She has 2 other members who vote with her on everything. You can't win at the hearing. She'll just say your documents are irrelevant, and the board's interpretation of the CC&Rs is final." "Then what do you suggest I do?" Marcus asked. There was a long pause. "I'm telling you this because I think you're a good man. And I don't like what she's doing. But I can't afford to cross her. My business depends on referrals in this community. She can ruin me." His voice was filled with a mixture of shame and pragmatism. "My advice: give in. Move the roses. Plant a smaller bush. It's just a few plants. Mr. Thorne, it's not worth the fight. Make peace. For your family." It was the voice of the moral compass. Bent and compromised by fear, Arthur was offering him the easy way out, the path of appeasement. But Marcus knew this was a test. If he gave in on the roses, he would be giving in on the principle. He would be validating Eleanor's abuse of power and signaling to the entire community that she was untouchable. He would be trading a small piece of his property for a permanent state of subjugation. "Thank you for the call, Mr. Chen," Marcus said, his voice firm but kind. "I appreciate your position, but it's not about the plants." He hung up. His decision made. He would not back down. But Arthur's call had given him a crucial piece of information. The board was already stacked against him. A victory at the hearing would require more than just the truth. It would require a truth so overwhelming, so irrefutable, that it would shatter Eleanor's power base on the spot. He needed the unredacted minutes. He needed to know why she was so obsessed with this specific piece of land. He filed a formal complaint with the state regulatory agency that oversees homeowners associations, citing the HOA's failure to provide complete records. He also hired a local paralegal to file a more aggressive, legally worded demand for the unredacted minutes, citing specific statutes and the threat of litigation. 3 days before the hearing, a second envelope arrived from Prestige Property Management. This one was thin. Inside was a single sheet of paper, the unredacted page from the minutes 3 months prior. His hands were steady as he read the line that had been blacked out. "Motion to approve contract for common area maintenance of the Northern View Corridor to Vance Landscaping for $15,000 annually. Motion carried 3-2. Vance Landscaping. The name of the company on the landscaper's polo shirt that first day. The name that shared a striking similarity with the board president's own. A quick search of state business records confirmed his suspicion. The registered owner of Vance Landscaping was a Mr. Robert Miller. A deeper search of public records and social media revealed Robert Miller's connection to Eleanor Vance. He was her brother-in-law. There it was, the motive. It wasn't about views or aesthetics. It was about money. Eleanor had declared his private property a common area so she could funnel $15,000 a year in HOA dues to her family's business to maintain it. His little rose garden stood in the way of her kickback scheme. The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. This wasn't just a violation of HOA rules. This was self-dealing, a breach of fiduciary duty. It was fraud. And he was about to expose it in a public forum, in front of the very people whose money she was stealing. He prepared his presentation. not as an angry homeowner, but as the crisis manager he once was. He would dismantle her argument, piece by documented piece, in front of the entire community. The community clubhouse buzzed with a nervous energy. The air was thick with the scent of stale coffee and suburban anxiety. Nearly 50 residents of Willow Creek Estates were packed into the uncomfortable folding chairs. Their faces, a mixture of curiosity, judgment, and resentment. They had been drawn here by Eleanor's email, eager to see the rebellious new resident put in his place. At the front of the room, a long table was draped in a forest green cloth. Eleanor Vance sat in the center, a picture of regal composure. To her right sat the two board members Arthur Chen had warned him about, their expressions mirroring Eleanor's stern disapproval. To her left sat a visibly uncomfortable Arthur Chen, who refused to meet Marcus's eye, and a representative from Prestige Property Management, Brenda, who was busy arranging stacks of paper. Marcus sat alone at a small table facing the board, a laptop and a projector his only allies. A large digital clock was mounted on the wall behind Eleanor, its red numerals glowing ominously. Each homeowner was allotted precisely 5 minutes to speak. 5:00, 4:59, 4:58. It was a pressure cooker by design. Eleanor called the meeting to order, her voice crisp and businesslike. After dispensing with the minutes from the previous meeting, she announced the reason for the hearing: Case Fee 2023-14, a violation of CC&R, Farger 8.4.2, at Lot 78, owned by Mr. Marcus Thorne. She presented the association's case with practiced confidence. She spoke of the importance of the Northern View Corridor, a term she repeated a dozen times, as if repetition could will it into existence. She displayed photos, taken by the compliance officer, of Marcus's wall and rose bushes, presenting them as a grave threat to the community's aesthetic harmony and property values. The covenants are quite clear. Mr. Thorne, she concluded, fixing him with a condescending gaze. This board expects full compliance. The violation is self-evident. We recommend the board vote to uphold the $500 fine and authorize the association to remove the offending installations at the homeowner's expense, if not cured within 7 days. She sat back, a faint, triumphant smile on her lips. She had framed the narrative. He was the villain. She was the protector. The audience murmured in agreement. Mr. Thorne, Eleanor said, a hint of theatricality in her voice. You have 5 minutes to respond. The clock on the wall started its countdown. 5 hours. Marcus stood and walked calmly to the projector. He connected his laptop, and the blank screen flickered to life. He did not look at Eleanor. He addressed the room, his voice steady and clear. Good evening. I'm not here to argue about opinions or aesthetics. I'm here to present facts and documents. I believe they will clarify this situation for everyone. Slide 1-1 appeared on the screen. It was a high-resolution image of his own property survey, the one stamped by a licensed surveyor. He used a laser pointer to trace the boundaries of his lot. This is the legal survey of my property, provided at closing. As you can see, the area in question, this 6-foot strip here, is clearly and legally part of Lot 78. It is private property. A few whispers rippled through the audience. Slide 2. Replace the first. It was the certified copy of the official Willow Creek Estates plat map he had obtained from the county. This is the official plat map for our community, recorded with the county and legally binding for the association. I'd like to draw your attention to the legend. He pointed to the key. This cross-hatching indicates a common area view corridor. As you can see, the designated corridors are over here, by the lake, There is no such designation anywhere near my property. The murmuring grew louder. People were leaning forward, squinting at the screen. Arthur Chen shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Slide 3. Clicked into place. It was the scenic easement deed. Finally, this is an easement deed, also recorded with the county. It specifically grants the association view protections on my property. However, he paused for effect, letting the word hang in the air. It applies only to the rear 10 feet of my lot and restricts only structures over 6 feet tall. It makes no mention of the side yard. This document proves that when the developer and the HOA wanted to create a view protection on my property, they knew how to do it legally. And they did it on a completely different part of my lot. The association cannot invent a new one on a whim. The room was now silent. The facts were clear, documented, and undeniable. He had proven, beyond any doubt, that the land was his. Eleanor's face was a stony mask, but a flicker of panic was visible in her eyes. "Mr. Thorne, your 5 minutes are nearly up," she said, her voice tight. "I only need 1 more minute," Marcus replied, his gaze unwavering. He clicked to the final slide. Slide 4. Filled the screen. It was a side-by-side comparison. On the left was the page from the HOA meeting minutes with the large black redaction. On the right was the unredacted version. He used the laser pointer to circle the key text. "The board has claimed this dispute is about a view. I believe it's about this," he said, his voice dropping slightly, but carrying to every corner of the room. "These are the minutes from the meeting 3 months ago. The board voted to approve a $15,000 annual contract to Vance Landscaping for the maintenance of the so-called Northern View Corridor, the very strip of land on my private property they are trying to control." A collective gasp went through the room. "And a simple search of state business records reveals," Marcus continued, delivering the final, devastating blow, "that the owner of Vance Landscaping is Mrs. Vance's brother-in-law." The clock on the wall read 0:01. It beeped softly. Marcus's time was up. The silence that followed was absolute. It was a heavy, suffocating silence, filled with the sudden, shocking weight of understanding. Every resident in the room was now looking at Eleanor Vance, not as their defender, but as the person who had just been caught using their money to pay her own family for a no-show job on land she had no right to. Her carefully constructed reality had been dismantled, piece by documented piece, in 4 minutes and 59 seconds. Eleanor was speechless. The color had drained from her face, leaving behind a pallid, waxen mask. Her mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. The 2 board members beside her looked at their papers, at the ceiling, anywhere but at her or the furious faces of the homeowners staring back at them. It was Arthur Chen who broke the spell. He pushed his chair back, the screech of its legs on the linoleum floor echoing like a gunshot in the silent room. He stood, his hands trembling slightly, but his voice, when he spoke, was clear and firm. "I move to immediately dismiss violation V 2023-14 against Mr. Thorne with prejudice," he announced. The room erupted in murmurs. He wasn't finished. "And I further move to launch an immediate, independent, third-party forensic audit of the association's financials for the last 5 years." A woman in the front row jumped to her feet. "I second that motion." Brenda, the manager from Prestige, began frantically gathering her papers. "This is all a terrible misunderstanding," she stammered, sweat beading on her forehead. The board was simply acting on the information it had. But no one was listening to her. The tide had turned. The power Eleanor had wielded for a decade had evaporated under the harsh, unforgiving light of a projector. Neighbors were now on their feet, shouting questions, demanding answers. The veneer of polite suburban order had cracked, revealing the anger that had simmered beneath it for years. Eleanor Vance sat frozen in her chair, a queen dethroned, her reign over Willow Creek Estates ending not with a bang, but with the quiet click of a final PowerPoint slide. The weeks that followed were a quiet revolution. The violation and fine against Marcus were immediately expunged from his record. The forensic audit moved forward with startling speed, uncovering not just the contract with Vance Landscaping, but a pattern of questionable expenses, no-bid contracts, and procedural abuses stretching back years. Faced with irrefutable evidence of self-dealing and a breach of fiduciary duty, Eleanor Vance and the two board members who had enabled her submitted their resignations via email in the dead of night. Prestige Property Management's contract was terminated by a unanimous vote at an emergency meeting of the homeowners. Willow Creek was cleaning house. Marcus, however, did not celebrate. During his deep dive into the county records, his research had led him down a different, unexpected path. He had been trying to understand Eleanor's almost fanatical obsession with his specific lot. He discovered that, 40 years ago, before Willow Creek Estates existed, the entire tract of land had belonged to a single family, the Vances. A title search revealed that the small farmhouse Eleanor's family had lived in for generations had stood on the exact parcel of land that was now Lot 78. His lot. The land had been lost in a bitter, eminent domain battle with the developer. A wound that, for Eleanor, had clearly never healed. Her attempt to control that 6-foot strip was a desperate, misguided effort to reclaim a piece of her stolen childhood. It didn't excuse her actions, but it cast them in a new, more tragic light. He also found something else. Tucked away in the HOA's expense reports from the previous year was a line item for a $5,000 emergency roof repair on the home of an elderly, widowed resident who lived on a fixed income. The payment was a clear violation of the CC&Rs, which strictly forbade using HOA funds to maintain private property. It was an action the old board would have crucified any other resident for. But Marcus saw the notation, personally approved by Eleanor, citing a hardship exemption. It was an abuse of her power, yes, but it was an abuse born of compassion. The great tyrant of Willow Creek had a secret, rule-breaking heart. At the next community meeting, held in the same clubhouse, but with a new interim board and a sense of cautious optimism in the air, Marcus was given the floor. The residents expected a victory lap, a final condemnation of the old regime. Instead, he surprised them all. He spoke not of Eleanor's fraud, but of the community's future. He spoke of the inflexibility of their rules and the need for a mechanism to help neighbors in genuine crisis. I have uncovered an instance where the previous board, while violating our bylaws, used association funds to help a resident in need, he said, careful not to name Eleanor or the resident. The action was improper, but the motive was not. We are a community, not just a corporation. We should have a way to care for one another that is transparent, fair, and legal. He then proposed an amendment to the bylaws, the creation of a formal community assistance fund, a voluntary contribution fund managed by a separate committee, designed to provide small grants to residents facing catastrophic, unforeseen financial hardships that threatened their ability to maintain their homes. His proposal was met with a moment of stunned silence. Then, with a wave of enthusiastic applause, he had taken his personal victory and turned it into a structural improvement for everyone. He had won the war, but had chosen grace, not vengeance. As the meeting concluded, David Chen, his old neighbor, approached him, a wide smile on his face. That was a class act, son, David said, clapping him on the shoulder. You know, they need people for the new board. People with integrity. He looked at Marcus expectantly. Marcus shook his head. I came here for peace. David, not politics. But, he added, a knowing look in his eye, I hear they're looking for a retired engineer with a deep knowledge of the community's history and a healthy skepticism of authority. David laughed, the sound echoing warmly in the clubhouse. All right, Thorne, you've twisted my arm. I'll run. Marcus walked home under a sky filled with stars. The oppressive uniformity of Willow Creek feeling, for the first time, like a blank canvas instead of a cage. He found Amelia in the garden, tending to the roses. They were thriving, their deep pink blooms a vibrant testament to the quiet battle they had won. She looked up at him, her smile radiant in the soft evening light. It's beautiful, she said, her voice filled with a peace that had been absent for weeks. Marcus put his arm around her, and together they looked out at their small patch of land, a sanctuary defended and a future reclaimed. The fight had been about more than just a 6-foot strip of property. It had been about the principle that rules should be a shield for the community, not a sword for the powerful. And, in the quiet heart of American suburbia, a crisis manager had finally found his own tranquil harbor.